Since the dawn of history, men have gazed up at the moon and wondered how it was formed, what caused the thousands of craters on its face, and what it would be like to stand on that strange, pockmarked surface. The dream of a journey to the moon proved an impossible one, until in the 68th year of the 20th century, both men and machines were ready. The men were three American astronauts, Air Force Colonel Frank Borman, Navy Captain James A. Lovell, Jr., and Air Force Major William A. Anders. The machine which carried them on their voyage of discovery was the third Saturn V, AS-503. The world would remember their historic mission by the simple designation Apollo 8. This is the story of man's first flight to the moon, as told in the voices of the men who made that age-old dream come true. On the morning of October 9, 1968, the Apollo 8 launch vehicle was rolled out of the Vehicle Assembly Building at the Kennedy Space Center and transported 3.5 miles to Launch Pad 39A. There, weeks of final checkout began. Finally, on the morning of December 21st, all was in readiness.
T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. The engines are armed. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
The first manned flight of the Saturn V and man's first trip to the moon was on its way. Guiding and controlling the giant Saturn V was an instrument unit built by IBM's Federal Systems Division. The astronauts and their rocket's third stage were inserted into an initial Earth orbit 103 nautical miles high. There, checks began of the spacecraft's systems. And then came the critical go, no-go decision to send 3 men to the moon, a maneuver known as trans-lunar injection.
Apollo 8, Houston. Go ahead, Houston. Apollo 8, you are go for TLI. Over. Roger, understand. We're go for TLI.
With 5 simple words, you are go for TLI, America committed 3 astronauts on a journey to the moon 250,000 miles away. Over the Pacific Ocean, the rocket's third stage engine was reignited, accelerating the spacecraft to more than 24,000 miles per hour, sufficient to escape the Earth's gravitational field. 5 hours into the mission, from a vantage point nearly 19,000 miles above the Earth, astronaut Jim Lovell gazed out his spacecraft window and gave his impressions.
Boy, it's really hard to describe what this Earth looks like. I'm looking out my center window, which is a round window, and the window is bigger than the Earth is right now. We can see all the way down to Cape Horn in South America.
Good grief, it must be quite a view.
Yeah, tell the people in Tierra del Fuego to put on their raincoats. Look like a storm is out there.
At 55 hours into the flight, the astronauts turned their onboard television camera back towards Earth to give a waiting world a glimpse of their planet from 180,000 miles out. The voice of Jim Lovell.
Mike, what I keep imagining is if I'm some lonely traveler from another planet, what do I think about the Earth from this altitude? Whether I think it'd be inhabited or not.
You don't see anybody waving, is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just kind of curious whether I would land on the blue or the brown part of the Earth. You better hope we land in the blue part.
As the astronauts approached the vicinity of the moon, they prepared for one of the most important maneuvers of the flight, Lunar Orbit Insertion, or LOI. Apollo 8 traveled to the moon in what was termed a free return trajectory. Had any malfunction occurred in the spacecraft, the astronauts still would have been able to swing behind the moon and loop back towards Earth without firing their service propulsion system engine. But Apollo 8 was go all the way. Early on the morning of December 24th, after a complete check of spacecraft systems, the go decision was made for LOI. As Apollo 8 disappeared behind the moon, an anxious world could only wait and hope. The spacecraft's service propulsion system engine had to fire at a precise time and for a precise duration to place Apollo 8 into an orbit approximately 60 by 169 nautical miles above the moon. The maneuver occurred on the moon's dark side. The men of Mission Control anxiously awaited the reappearance of the spacecraft on the moon's near side. As the time approached, there was no word from Apollo 8. The tension mounted. Then came the moment of reacquisition. Telemetry data flowed back from the spacecraft, but there was still no word from the crew. And then, across the vastness of space, came the dramatic news that Apollo 8 was in lunar orbit.
We've got it. Apollo 8 now in lunar orbit. There's a cheer in this room. This is Apollo Control Houston, switching now to the voice of Jim Lovell.
By 60.5. Good to hear your voice.
Man's age-old dream had suddenly come true. 3 Americans looked down on a sight never before witnessed by man, the rugged, pockmarked surface of the moon. Jim Lovell gives his impressions.
The moon is essentially green color. Looks like plaster of Paris. Or sort of a grayish beach sand. We can see quite a bit of detail. The Sea of Fertility doesn't stand out as well here as it does back on Earth. There's not as much contrast between that and the surrounding craters. The craters are all rounded off. There's quite a few of them. Some of them are newer. Many of them look like, especially the round ones, look like hit by meteorites or projectiles of some sort.
"72 hours into the mission, Apollo 8 was given a go for LOI-2, another lunar orbit insertion burn of its service propulsion system engine, circularizing its orbit some 60 nautical miles above the lunar surface. The maneuver was a success. The Apollo astronauts took motion pictures and still photographs and tracked lunar landmarks. But among the most important things the astronauts brought back from the moon were their impressions of what they saw.
Mike, I think I can say without contradiction there's been a mighty long dry spell up here.
It certainly looks like we're picking the more interesting parts of the moon to land in. The backside looks like a sand pile my kids have been playing in for a long time. It's all beat up, no definition, just a lot of bumps and holes.
Christmas Eve, and another telecast from the moon. The astronauts share their sights and impressions with an eager world.
The moon is a different thing to each one of us. I think that each one carries his own impressions of what he's seen today. I know my own impression is that it's a vast, lonely, forbidding type existence or expanse of nothing. It looks rather like clouds and clouds of pumice stone, and it certainly would not appear to be a very inviting place to live or work. Jim, what have you thought most about?
Well, Frank, my thoughts were very similar. The vast loneliness up here on the moon is awe-inspiring, and it makes you realize just what you have back there on Earth. The Earth from here is a grand oasis in the big vastness of space.
Bill, what do you think? I think the thing that impressed me the most were the lunar sunrises and sunsets.
It was just over 86 hours into the flight when the crew of Apollo 8 ended their TV transmission with a never-to-be-forgotten message.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day.
And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
As Christmas Day began to creep across America, the crew of Apollo 8 got the go for TEI, Trans-Earth Injection. Now came the most critical moment of the entire flight. On the backside of the moon, alone and out of contact with Earth, Borman, Lovell, and Anders reignited their engine to propel them out of lunar orbit and place them on a path towards Earth. Again, the world waited for the spacecraft to reappear on the near side of the moon, for word that all was well. The anxious moments ticked by.
Apollo 8, Houston.
Apollo 8, over.
Hello, Apollo 8. Loud and clear.
Roger. Please be informed there is a Santa Claus.
You're the best ones to know.
Apollo 8 was homeward bound. The world's most complex space flight had been an unprecedented success. 97,000 miles out from Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 sent back their last television transmission.
I think I must have the feeling that the travelers in the old sailing ships used to have. We've gone on a very long voyage away from home, and now we're headed back. And I have that feeling of being proud of the trip, but still happy to be going back home and back to our home port.
On the morning of December 27th, Apollo 8 came home. Came home in a blazing re-entry that brought the spacecraft down only 5,000 yards from the prime recovery ship, the aircraft carrier Yorktown. A landing described as near perfect as possible. Apollo 8 was home, and the world could look back on a new and important scientific milestone. But Apollo 8 was only the beginning. There will be other flights to the moon and beyond. The men and the machines are ready. Down across the centuries, men have dreamed of going to the moon, fulfilling a strange yearning to slip the bounds of Earth. With Apollo 8, that dream came true.